Second intermission Saturdays is 32 Thoughts, presented by GMC and the new Sierra AT4X. Jeff, Marek, Elliotte, Friedman on the Vancouver-Toronto show. Chris Cuthbert described you two as the hardest two working men in hockey.
Fooled another one.
I knew you'd say that, Elliotte.
He read that exactly as we wrote it.
I heard you two and Amal do the podcast yesterday after a long day, and that was funny to hear you shake the cobwebs. It was great, and you'll do another one tomorrow night that'll drop Monday morning. So, But listen, next Saturday we turn the clocks ahead. Tonight we thought we would turn them back and just go coast to coast with what was almost Edmonton. Let's start there.
I think everybody wonders, like, what didn't happen that was talked about or might have happened. And to me, one of the most fascinating things is the Edmonton Oilers made a legitimate pitch for Timo Meier. Now, obviously, it didn't happen. He was traded to the New Jersey Devils, but the Oilers did take a long look into it, and from what I understand, they made an offer. They were looking at it like, we'll bring him in and we'll figure out everything in the summer after the season, but they wanted him for the playoffs. I thought it was a really interesting idea. I think Calgary looked at it too, but they were more interested in him if they could sign him, which Meier obviously hasn't done. But Edmonton, Jeff, was willing to do it and just let things play out down the road.
One more thing about the Edmonton Oilers outside of Timo Meier. I believe that the Oilers at least had internal conversations about bringing in Zach MacEwan, the tough Maritimer. There were a lot of people in and around the Edmonton Oilers team that really coveted his toughness, thought he could be a fit. There were the discussions. Ultimately, it went nowhere. Zach MacEwan ended up getting traded to the Los Angeles Kings for Brendan Lemieux and a fifth, but they did, Ron, have those discussions about MacEwan.
And Jeff, it's hard to imagine Toronto's wish list was larger than 6 new players, but Elliotte, you're saying it was.
Yes, they did look at a couple of other very interesting things too, and one of them was Mattias Ekholm, who of course is playing for the Oilers now, and the other was Erik Karlsson, who is still in San Jose. The Maple Leafs did inquire on both players, did think about both players, but I just don't think the math was possible at all with what San Jose was willing to retain. As we saw, Nashville only retained 4% of Ekholm's salary. So Toronto did what it did. Pretty happy with that, but they did look and consider those other options. It just didn't make cap sense.
One of the neat stories of yesterday was the Ritchie brothers trade.
Oh, and you know what? Connor Mackey's in this one, Trey Stetcher's in this one, but we will always call this Brett for Nick, the Ritchie trade, Ron, as you mentioned. And a couple of things here. Nick Ritchie has been on the Calgary Flames radar for a number of years. When he signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs, there were 6 teams that made legitimate offers, and then they whittled it down to 3. Calgary was one of those 3 teams, highly coveted by the Flames, and specifically Daryl Sutter. That relationship goes back to when Sutter was with the Anaheim Ducks and Ritchie was a first-round draft pick and plying his trade in Anaheim. Brett, this one almost seemed fated that he was bound to go. There were a lot of rumors last summer that he might end up a member of the Los Angeles Kings, and you know, Ron, we kind of joked on the podcast about them moving into one another's houses. And as of this afternoon when I checked, they hadn't had the conversation yet. But as one of the brothers said, this is a, quote, no-brainer.
And you also joke, for the sake of the equipment managers, keep your number that your brother wears in that city. Listen, for sure San Jose, once Timo Meier was in the discussion, they were at the heart of a lot of talks the last month. And the Philadelphia Flyers, Chuck Fletcher, people are kind of going at Philadelphia and thinking, well, what happened there? Kevin Hayes was a possibility. Travis Konecny might have been a possibility. You don't think so, Elliotte. And Ivan Provorov might be a possibility. So why don't you take us through those?
Okay, so a couple of things. You mentioned the San Jose Sharks. So Jordan Greenway ends up going from the Minnesota Wild to the Buffalo Sabres. A relationship there with Sabres head coach Don Granato. That stretches back to the U.S. National Development Program. Also someone who coached Jordan Greenway at BU is David Quinn, now head coach of the San Jose Sharks. And I believe that the San Jose Sharks did make a pitch to try to bring Greenway in as the San Jose Sharks and Mike Greer tried to put a stamp on what this team is going to look like going forward. You mentioned the Philadelphia Flyers as well. And listen, Chuck Fletcher kind of got beaten up a little bit today at the Philadelphia Flyers town hall. I know the hue and cry out there yesterday was about James Van Riemsdyk and the inability to make trades. But the Flyers have a lot of players that have term attached to them. And while there were conversations between Philadelphia and Columbus over players like Kevin Hayes, it sounds more like any deal the Philadelphia Flyers are going to make will happen around the draft and wasn't going to happen at trade deadline.
Memorial Cup?
couple of things here. So all the 4 candidates vying for the Memorial Cup, that is Kingston, Niagara, Sault Ste. Marie, and Saginaw, all had their presentations to the CHL this week, and a couple of things still to go through and some follow-ups, but we'll get an announcement a little bit later on this month, Ron.
And finally, a very important announcement on behalf of Mike Stothers, who was recently diagnosed with cancer, Elliotte.
Yes, the Anaheim assistant coach revealing this morning that he's been diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma of a lymph node. And, you know, we're all rooting for Mike Stothers. Everybody is rooting for Mike Stothers. But what's important is the message that he wanted to deliver.
I guess my message to everybody would be, like, if you notice something that doesn't look right, if you're not feeling right, make sure you get yourself checked.
Bless your heart, Mike. As you said, Elliotte, we're cheering for you and wishing you a speedy convalescence.